All right, this video is on solving inequalities. And what you need, well, first of all, if you have not learned how to solve equations, you should learn that first. So I'm assuming in this video that you've already learned how to solve one-step, two-step, and multi-step equations. If you have not learned how to do those, then you should go learn those first. So solving inequalities uses the exact same steps as solving equations with one exception. And that exception is if the variable is being multiplied or divided by a negative number, then you must flip the inequality. And what I mean by that is if this is the inequality symbol, then you have to flip it around and make it like this before you solve the inequality. Or you could do it at the end, either way. But anytime the variable is being multiplied or divided by a negative number, you have to flip the inequality symbol. And that just means make it face the other way. That's a P. Okay? One other thing I want to show you is that when you're solving an inequality, let's say you solve it and your answer comes out to this. Just like with solving equations, remember when we were solving equations, if you got an answer like this, I said that you should rewrite it with the variable first. So instead of saying 3 equals x, write it as x equals 3. Well, the same thing is true with inequalities. So you should put the variable first. You have to be careful. This says 3 is greater than x, right? So in other words, x is less than 3. So when I move the variable over to the other side, for this to have the same meaning, I also have to flip the inequality around. So this and this mean the same things, right? Another way of thinking about this is you might have learned when you're first starting inequalities that you can think of this as an alligator or Pac-Man or something else, and it wants to eat the larger value. So in this first statement, the 3 is the larger value, the alligator's eating that. So when we flip this around, the alligator still needs to be eating the 3, so that's why I have to flip the inequality. So it's still saying the same thing. Okay, now this doesn't have anything to do with this. All right, so it could be, and I should have an example to show you this, it could be that you end up flipping the inequality because the variable is being multiplied or divided by a negative number, and then your answer comes out like this, and you have to flip it again when you move your variable over to the other side. So some people call that a double flip. So actually the inequality ends up back where it started because you had to flip it because the variable is being multiplied or divided by a negative number, and then you flipped it again because the variable was on the right side and you wanted to move it to the left side. If that's confusing to you, just wait, and I should have an example of that to show you. So again, you can solve this exactly like you would solve this. So we're going to solve this by subtracting 9 from both sides and then dividing by 4. No different than we would solving this. But you have to keep the one exception in mind. So is the variable here being multiplied or divided by a negative number? Apologize for my cough. And the answer is no. The variable is being multiplied by positive 4. So we don't have to worry about flipping this one. So this one does not have a flip. So we're just going to solve it just like we'd solve an equation. So I'm going to subtract 9 from both sides. 9 minus 9 is 0. So now I have 4t is greater than 12. Divide both sides by 4. Those cancel out. And t is greater than 3. And that's it. That's your solution. So there was nothing different than if I had solved this. If I had solved this, I would have done minus 9 on both sides. I would have had 4t equals 12. Divide by 4. And t equals 3. So the only difference is that there's an inequality symbol instead of an equal sign. That's it. And then you may be asked to graph this. If you're asked to graph your solution, if you haven't learned how to graph inequalities yet, you can go watch my lesson on that, learn how to do that. So 3 is over here, negative 3 is here on a number line. I'm not going to put the numbers in between, but there is 1, 2, and 3, right? Negative 1, negative 2, negative 3. Since there's not a line underneath this, it's an open circle at 3. T is greater than 3, the values that are greater than 3 are to the right. Or you can use the arrow trick. This is pointing to the right, so you shade to the right. And that's just showing all the values that T could be. T could be anything greater than 3. All right, so let's look at another one. So let's distribute first and then combine like terms. And then let's decide if the variable is being multiplied or divided by a negative. Okay, so let's get this to a two-step equation, and then we'll decide whether or not this is one we need to flip. So the first step I'm going to do is distribute here. So 3 times t is 3t, plus 3 times 1 is 3. So that gets me to here. So again, I'm doing this just like if this was an equal sign. Next step is combine like terms. So I have 3t minus 4t, so 3t minus 4t. 3 minus 4 is negative 1. So that would be negative t plus 3 is greater than or equal to negative 5. Okay, now let's decide now whether or not we need to flip the inequality. And again, the question is the variable being multiplied or divided by a negative number? And the answer is yes, because there's really a 1 written in front of the t, or there's a 1 in front of the t that's not written. So this is really negative 1 times t. So because of that, this is one that I need to flip the inequality. So I'm going to rewrite this as negative t plus 3 less than or equal to negative 5. So this is the one thing that makes solving inequalities different. If the variable is being multiplied or divided by a negative number, you have to flip the inequality around. So now we'll continue on solving this just like a normal two-step equation. So I subtract 3 from both sides. So those cancel out. And I have negative t is less than or equal to negative 8. Remember, there's a 1 here, so it's really negative 1 times t. So to get rid of that negative sign, we divide by negative 1. That cancels that out. And my answer is t less than or equal to positive 8. And again, I ask you to graph that. So I'll just put 0 here, positive 8 to the right, negative 8 to the left. This has a line underneath it, so it's a closed circle at 8. It says t is less than or equal to 8. The values that are less than 8 are to the left. So these are all the values that t could be. Could be 8 or anything less than that. And again, since it's a solid circle, that means t could be 8. And again, if you want to use the arrow trick, the arrow is pointing to the left, shade to the left. That trick only works if the variable's on this side of the inequality. If the variable's on this side, you need to move it before you use the arrow trick. Look at another one. Again, let's simplify this down to a 1 or 2 step inequality before we decide if we need to flip the inequality. So step number 1 is I'm going to keep variables on the same side. So I can either subtract 6 in or subtract 3 in. I'm going to subtract 3 in because that'll leave me with a positive value. So that cancels out. 6 in minus 3 in is 3 in. So that gets me to here. And now I'm looking at just a 2-step inequality. And so now I'm going to look, do I need to flip it? And the answer is no, because the variable is being multiplied by a positive value. You only flip it if the variable is being multiplied or divided by a negative value. So we don't have to flip the inequality, so we can just continue on. Plus 1, plus 1. So now I have 3n is greater than 9. Divide both sides by 3. So my solution is n is greater than 3. And for my graph, I'll just put 0 in the middle, positive 3 to the right, negative 3 to the left. There's no line under the inequality, so it's an open circle at 3. N is greater than 3. The values that are greater than 3 are to the right. Again, the arrow trick, the arrow is pointing to the right, shade to the right. All right, so let's simplify this down before we decide if we need to flip it or not. So first thing I'm gonna do is distribute. Same rules I would follow if this was an equation. So I have 10 minus 8a is greater than or equal to distribute and get 10 minus 8a. All right, so let's get the variables on the same side. So we're going to add 8a to both sides. Plus 8a, a plus 8a. Those cancel out. They both cancel out. What I'm left with is 10 is greater than or equal to 10. So remember from solving equations, when your variables both disappear, your solution is either going to be identity, meaning there's an infinite number of solutions, meaning the solution is all real numbers, or it's no solution. So if you end up with a true statement, then it's identity. If you end up with an untrue statement, then it's no solution. So the question is 10 greater than or equal to 10? And the answer is yes. That is a true statement. That's true because 10 is equal to 10. And this says 10 is greater than, or, the word or is important here, or it's equal to 10. And it is equal. So the solution to this would be identity. Another way of writing identity as your solution is to write an R like this. And that means identity or all real numbers. What that means is you can put in any real number for A, and this inequality will always be true. So you might see this symbol written sometimes. All right, so it's important to know that with inequalities, it is possible to get identity or no solution as your answer. All right, so let's look at another one. So again, let's simplify this down before we decide if we need to flip. So I'm going to combine like terms, so nothing to combine on this side. But over here, I have 7m minus 1m. There's a 1 that's not written. So 7 minus 1 is 6m. So that gets me to here. So let's get the variables on the same side. So I'm going to subtract 6m from both sides. And I think you can probably see that these are going to cancel out again like the last one. And I get negative 5 is greater than 7. And that is false. Negative 5 is not greater than 7. So the answer to this would be no solution. No solution. All right, another way that you'll see no solution written sometimes is like that. So it's 0 with a slash through it. All right, I think the next one I've got here is a word problem. You want to make a rectangular banner that is 18 feet long. You have no more than 48 feet of trim for the banner. What are the possible widths of the banner? So let's draw a quick picture here. So I've got this banner. That's a terrible picture. That's 18 feet long, and we don't know its width. All right. So it says you want to make a rectangular banner. It's 18 feet long. You have no more than 48 feet of trim. So you don't have more than that, but you do have 48. So what that means, no more than, means you have 48 feet, but not more than that. And for trim, what that means is they're going to put it around this. So it's a perimeter. So what you're looking at here is 18 plus 18 plus x. That's how much trim you're going to need. That's the distance around the banner. And it says you have no more than 48. That means you have less than or equal to 48. That's a funky 8. So no more than means less than or equal to. So let's combine the like terms. So we have 36 plus 2x is less than or equal to 48. The variable is being multiplied by a positive 2, so this is not one I have to flip. So I just subtract 36 from both sides. Just like if this was an equation, 2x is less than or equal to 12. Divide both sides by 2. Give myself a little more room here. And my solution is x is less than or equal to 6. That's one ugly 6. So the width here can be 6 or less. So if it's 6, then you're going to use all of your trim. If it's less than 6, then you'll have some left over. All right, so I told you I was going to show you, I thought I had a problem on here that was a double flip. So let me just make one real quick. I'll make a really simple one. All right, this will just be a one-step problem, but I want to show you what a double flip looks like. Okay, so first of all, is the variable being multiplied or divided by a negative number? And the answer is yes, it's being multiplied by -2. So this is one that I need to flip. So I'm going to rewrite this as 4 is less than or equal to -2x. So I flip the inequality around. Now let's go ahead and solve this. So divide both sides by -2, just like you would solve an equation. 4 divided by -2 is -2. And so there's my answer, but I don't want you to leave your answer like that. I want you to write your answer this way. And when I do that, I have to flip the inequality around. So the alligator was eating the x. I want it to still be eating the x. So when I move the x over here, I have to flip the inequality. And what you see is that the inequality ends up back where it started because I did a double flip. I flipped it the first time because the variable was being multiplied by a negative number. And then I flipped it the second time because I was moving the x from the right side to the left side. So that's an example of a problem where you would have to do a double flip. All right, so I hope that was helpful and useful to you. If so, give it a like and a subscribe, and feel free to leave me a comment. Until next time.